Welcome back to my BN4 Mono-Soul Challenge Run series. In these BN4 runs, I play through the game starting on a fresh save file up until the first duo fight, while using patch cards to keep one double soul active for the entirety of the run. These patch cards let me permanently use a double soul, but also gives me an annoying HP bug that rapidly drains my health down to just 1 HP. In addition, my folders are limited to using chips that fit the theme of a double soul. For example, I could only use fire chips with Fire Soul or wood chips with Wood Soul. And after a long year and a half or so, I've finally made it to the final run. And honestly, I did try to save the potentially worst run for last, as today we'll be looking at Wind Soul. Now at first, Wind Soul doesn't seem like it's that bad. Giving plus 10 damage to wind chips is decent, and having air and float shoes for the entire run can only be helpful. But the real issue is in the lack of chip options that I have with Wind Soul. There's also the fact that I don't have access to my normal Mega Buster, which gets replaced by an Air Shot Buster while Wind Soul is active. But before we get into the run proper, let's go over the rules so I can explain what I meant by lack of chip options. Of course, I'm starting the game on a fresh save file and using patch cards to keep Wind Soul active at all times, which of course comes at the cost of causing that battle HP bug. In addition, my chips are limited to wind element chips, which include a grand total of 4 different ones, assuming I get lucky. For standard chips, I only have access to Air Shot, Tornado, and Wind Rack, the last of which is only attainable after I've already defeated the final tournament of the game. This is clearly an issue, as Air Shot only does 30 damage with Wind Soul, and Tornado is only obtainable early on as an expensive one-of in the ACDC2 shop, or from Battle Mystery Data and chip trading. Realistically, I can't play the entire game with only 8 usable chips in my folder, and these chips would be nowhere near enough to defeat Duo, so I decided to improvise a bit. In addition to wind type chips, I figured that since Wind Soul activates a fan effect that pulls in enemies, sword chips would technically also fit the Wind Soul theme. So that means that I'll be using sword chips as well in this run, though I did decide to ban myself from using Life Sword. And in addition to this, I decided to include another class of chips to my final folder, which I thought would help me through the late and end game stages, though you'll have to wait until later on to find out which chips these are. Now, although Wind Soul isn't exactly one of my favorites to use, I do have to admit that the fan effect comboed with the Wind Rack charge attack was actually a nice change of pace immediately after having no usable charge attack at the start of my Junk Soul run. This helped me clear out viruses in the ACDC area easily enough, which is important since I actually had a crucial task here. I needed to collect Zenny from Battle Mystery Data early on, which I'd be using very soon. Another useful strategy early on was using Crack Out on my own panels, then standing on those panels to avoid taking damage from Metar viruses. Look at me utilizing my Air Shoes ability effectively. Unfortunately, when I didn't have access to Crack Out, I risked being deleted, which we can see in this first death. This actually happened a few times, as I would always expect the Metars to attack from the bottom first, failing to remember that I was pulling Metars to their front column with Wind Soul's fan, so Metars attacked in orders I didn't always anticipate. Once the shop in ACDC2 was open, I was able to use my collected Zenny to buy the most important chip in the game, Tornado. And then, for some reason, rather than going directly into the Elect Tower comp to face Shademan, I decided to take a pit stop in Town Area 3, where I died by moving into a Volgear's attack for no reason, followed by dying by walking into a Metar's Shockwave for no reason. And since I'm just walking into completely avoidable attacks, let's finish off the Trinity by walking into a Billy's Thunderball. And then let's also walk into Shademan, just for good measure. With the introductory scenario complete, I checked the tournament pairings and saw that my first round opponent was Ponta. Usually this could be annoying due to the fan. But since Wind Soul doesn't care about poison panels, I was able to get some sweet revenge against the fan by doing absolutely nothing and watching it eat its own medicine. As for the fight against Ponta, that was really easy since her HP is only at 300, letting me take the quick win with some swords and some wind racks. Next up was, of course, Gutsman. On my first turn in this battle, I was able to land an easy wide sword, followed by 3 easy Windraks against him, and then take away some of his area, landing a Windrak into a counter hit longsword on the following turn. And with his HP low already, I of course finished him off with yet another Windrak. Last up in this tournament was, unsurprisingly, Topman. Before taking him on, I decided to do some chip trading and got the best possible chip for this point in the run, Rock Cube. I immediately made this my preset chip, and it saw immediate use in my match against Topman. Speaking of, this fight was going extremely well, with me even getting a counter hit with a longsword at one point. Unfortunately, when he was at 25 HP, I wasn't able to dodge both his tops and him, causing death 7. On my second attempt, a tornado with attack plus 10 dealt major damage, and after 2 Windraks, I was able to defeat Topman with that preset Rock Cube all in the first turn. After the tournament, I went to the park area to finish up my stream, where I got frozen to death by a weather virus. Unfortunately, this does mean that I finished up the first night with only the 1 copy of Tornado that I bought in the ACDC2 shop. Rather than getting more copies of Tornado, however, I decided to go to Castillo with mail, and this time, this part of the game was deadly. The first issue was the triple Shrimpy virus in Park Area 3, where I learned the hard way that standing over a hole would not protect me from their attacks. That's 10 to 12 then all happened to the same fight, the final virus in the first Toy Robocomp. Not that big of a surprise really, given the presence of a Melody virus in that battle. Death 13 then also happened against the Melody virus in the final battle of the third Toy Robo, but after that I was able to get to and defeat Shademan with no issues, especially since Windsoul pulls him into your Dark Sword range. Moving on to the next tournament, my first round opponent was Flav, and since this is a quick and fairly safe scenario, we can get directly into that match. Unfortunately, given this terrible starting hand, there wasn't much I could do in this attempt other than to push my Rock Cube into him. That's the downside of trying a Snake folder with just 1 copy of the Snake chip. On the second attempt, I managed to do a bit more damage on the first turn, but dealing with his Fanfare, Blinder, and Wind combination felt like it was impossible. I then ended up dying on the next 3 attempts for a total of 5 deaths against Flav. On the winning attempt, using Area Grab and Panel Grab together put me in a good spot in the battle, especially after I used Triple Crack on his back column the following turn. This let me rack up some damage with my charge shot, and I managed to trap him in his top row using double cracks, letting me finally finish this battle with a Rock Cube. Finally moving on to round 2, my opponent was Burnman, but I also got the unfortunate news that I would not be fighting Windman in this run, which limits my already severely small number of available wind chips. How wonderful. And yes, I did redeem myself by getting the perfect Water Buster at the end of the scenario. I can't end these Double Soul runs without that accomplishment at least. Unsurprisingly, the fight against Burnman is easy thanks to my preset Rock Cube blocking one of his burners. Also unsurprisingly, I ended up messing it up anyways by placing that cube in a terrible spot, so it wasn't protecting me while I was trying to hit Burnman with my Windrak. Attempt 2 went much better with my cube destroying his top burner, and while I was doing a lot of damage with my Windraks, I stupidly walked directly into his lower burner at the end of the fight. This tournament is really not going well now. Attempt 3 was basically a repeat of attempt 2, and then on attempt 4, I finally managed to play properly, using a panel grab to stop his burning jet attack, and then getting Birdman down to 20 HP after using a tornado against him. And then I of course botched the winning fight. Attempt 5 then started the same way as every other attempt, but the ending was quite different. After missing a tornado because I was too afraid to move, I finally moved back and used double cracks on my field, letting me use a 9-hit snake against Burnman, and by some miracle, I suddenly locked in, avoiding all of his attacks until I was able to defeat him with 2 air shots on the next turn. Last up as mentioned is Roll, so let's take a quick moment to watch me aimlessly run around while playing tag for the last time. As for the battle against Roll, let's just say that I did a Balnark 6 cosplay here. On the first turn, I of course used Rock Cube after setting up an area and panel grab, though I unfortunately missed when pushing the cube. On the next turn, however, I managed to use a second area grab, column locking roll. Although her roll arrow deleted the rest of my chips for the turn, the battle was already over, as roll can only attack you while in your row, so I was able to safely spam my Windrax against her with my rock cube in front of me to protect me. That's a great way to end this miserable tournament. But of course, at the end of that tournament, we had to face off against Gutsman DS, which went as well as the roll fight did. It turns out that column locking enemies is a great strategy with Mono-Soul. Who could have ever guessed such a thing? Even though Gutsman was able to break out of the column lock with his own area grab, this ended up being a really simple fight. Before ending the stream after defeating Gutsman DS, I decided to take a quick trip to Higsby's, where I was finally able to get a second copy of Tornado and a third copy of Rock Cube. At the start of the next night, I made my way to Netopia to unlock the rest of the net. While running around the net getting my Sea Slider parts, I ended up in a battle with a weather virus, which was saved from my cube by a sand pit. That virus then ended up deleting me when I used a tornado against it. With my Sea Slider obtained, I of course made my way into the Undernet with the goal of first obtaining the Oil Body program. This allowed me to finally do something that I should have done during my first stream: get more tornado chips. By using Oil Body in Town Area 3, I could force Volgear viruses to appear, which can occasionally have a battle mystery data with them. This mystery data can have the tornado chip in it, so I made sure to get my last 2 copies of the chip before starting the next tournament. The next goal was to return to the Undernet, where I once again died to a Shrimpy virus, as I forgot that standing on holes doesn't protect me from their attack. I then died to a Kilby virus in Undernet 3, which is ironic since these guys were my current goal. Just as I had done in the past few runs, I used the jungle program in Undernet 3 to force Kilby viruses to appear, increasing my chances of getting this battle with a mystery data. This of course is my method for farming bug frags in the game, and once I had enough of them, I obtained the collect program, which I immediately used in the park area to help me get the Blizzard chip. While trying to get Blizzard, I did end up being deleted 4 times in total, though I eventually managed to get Blizzard specifically in the V code. Since Mono-Soul has float shoes and isn't affected by panel types, I figured that the Elemperor chips would be a great addition to this run. As such, I needed to make one last trip to the Undernet to get some copies of Element Flare, which I ended up never using, as well as some copies of Element Ice, though of course the latter brought me into Undernet 6, and caused a few more deaths. After collecting all my chips, I decided to test if I could push boy bombs using my Airshot Buster, which went poorly. So I immediately gave up on that one, and since I had already collected all the chips I needed for the rest of the run, I decided to end the night by checking who my first round opponent would be in the final tournament. Son of a bitch! What better a way to begin the finale stream than by doing the stupid Water God scenario? Fortunately, I'm getting really good at that scenario and completing it deathless, so let's move on to the battle. On the first turn, I barely missed a sand ring that would have been able to double the damage of my tornado, though the tornado itself still hit. A second sand ring then trapped the jammer in place, letting me push a rock cube into him. And on the next turn, after hitting a blizzard and a windwrack, Jammer was brought to under 200 HP, letting me take the win by trading a hit from his hero sword with a second rock cube. Next up in this run was Coldman yet again, in the second run where he would get hard countered. The fun thing about this fight is the ice panels that are already spawned on the field, making it easy for me to power up my element ice chips, and seeing as I can push ice cubes back at him, yeah, this wasn't a difficult fight at all. I honestly played it horribly, and still managed to win just by not getting hit by his attacks. Last up in this run was Searchman, which of course means I needed to head back to Sharo, and after the past several runs, you all know what that means, bullying Coldman Alpha. Seriously, Coldman is a joke when you're using Junk or Wind Souls. As for Searchman's scenario, I did manage to get to the end of it with no issues, though I did end up dying twice in the final virus battles. In the battle against Searchman, I spent the first turn trying to set up a big Blizzard, Element Ice, and Blinder combo, but failed it by accidentally giving Searchman all of my ice panels. I'm blaming the rock he spawns for that one, since it blocks one of the panels that I would have gotten bonus off of with Color Point. However, I did still do some decent damage to him, and the blinder that I used slowed him down enough to let me get a sand ring into a tornado, deleting Searchman when he was still at 600 HP. That's a pretty good way to finish off the final tournament battle. With that tournament done, all that was left was to finish off the game, and of course, to get the most important chip of the run, Windrack, which is only obtainable after completing the final tournament, and which I'll end up taking out of my folder before the end of the game. Wind options really suck in this game. Eventually, I made my way to the fight against Laserman, which of course was the easiest fight in the game. I haven't lost against this guy even a single time, definitely didn't die to him on my Junk Soul run, so I knew that this wouldn't be an issue. Element Ice and Tornado are just too much for Nebula's leader, I guess. As per usual, the battle against my Dark Soul was pretty simple, although he did manage to steal away my only ice panel before I could use Element Ice on it. As for Duo, it was right back to a series of deaths with him. Although I did fairly well in these fights, I still ended up dying multiple times. On the bright side, having to fight my Dark Soul for a second time led to this incredible moment where he was damaged by his own rock cube. The biggest issue with these duo fights, at least in my opinion, is that I was overly reliant on chips that required me to stand in specific spots, while also having to dodge his attacks whenever he didn't go for his laser. My chips also generally weren't doing massive chunks of damage at once, unless I was setting them up with several other chips alongside them, such as Blinder for my Element Ice and Attack plus 10 for my Tornadoes. Despite this, I was getting Duo's HP pretty low on the majority of these attempts, and just barely failing to finish him off at times. Once I got to 40 deaths, I had had enough and decided to change up my folder a bit, getting rid of the Wide Sword, Area Grab, and Windrack chips, since using those against Duo is always a bit risky. Instead, I placed in guard chips for defense, which I figured would be fine, since the shockwave from them can't reach Duo anyways. In the first attempt with the updated folder, I had a good start with 2 tornado chips. And on the next turn, I was able to get a good Blizzard Element Ice combo and perfectly use a second Blizzard as a defensive option. After that strong turn, I managed to land a full Tornado with 2 Attack plus 10s attached, basically a Life Sword, and get right back to my custom window with full Cust, giving me yet another empowered Element Ice. A second Tornado with a smaller attack buff brought Duo down to 150 HP, and finally, on the last turn, I was able to use one more Element Ice on one of my remaining ice panels, finally finishing off the final Double Soul run. I am so glad that his Meteor Knuckle didn't crack that ice panel. And that's it for my Wind Soul run, which means that my Balnark 4 Double Soul series is officially complete. Honestly, adding the Element Ice chip was a brilliant strategy for this run, and I genuinely think that I would not have been able to defeat Duo if I didn't throw that combo into my folder. And to be fair, Wind Soul does work well alongside this combo, since Wind Soul's float shoes allow you to step onto ice panels without slipping. We could also see that I was actually playing well against Duo this time around, and was just getting a bit unlucky with the attacks that he was throwing out. Overall though, I'm pretty happy with how this run went. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and consider subscribing to my channel for some more Balnark content. And if you think that this was the final run of Balnark 4 that I'd be showcasing in this channel, then I'm glad to say that you'd be wrong. Although I have all 12 Double Soul runs complete, there's still one last thing to do in Balnark 4 before I begrudgingly move on to the other 5 games in the series, the Dark Soul run. As of this video's upload, I'm already partway through playing that run, and it's been a blast so far. So if you want to check out that run, you can catch me streaming it live, and look forward to my video about that run in the future. And as always, thanks for watching.